Okay, hi everyone, welcome to ArtsFest Online and to tonight's talk with Rick Sanders, otherwise known as Willis the Poet. Rick is a comedy stand-up poet based in the West Midlands, and joining him this evening will be Dr. R.M. Francis, writer and lecturer in creative writing. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box and we'll go through them towards the end. And just a bit of housekeeping before we start, just a reminder that this event is being recorded and it is a public platform, so please don't share any confidential information. So welcome both, and over to you, Rob.
Thanks very much, Claire, and thank you everyone for coming along and joining us this evening in celebration for Rick's latest and debut collection of poetry, The Secret Notebook of Willis the Poet. The way this is going to work this evening is I'm going to give a brief introduction. Rick's going to share some of his work with us. Then we're going to have a little tete-a-tete and chew the fat with Rick about his poetry, his performance, his poetics, and then we'll close the evening with some more poems. I really hope you enjoy it. So Rick Sanders is a writer, musician, performer, and comedian, also known as Willis the Poet. And is a seriously impressive artist, workshop leader, community arts facilitator, and the host of Brum Radio Poetry. He's based in the Lie in the Black Country, and his hilarious, deft, and surreal poetry has impressed crowds and publishers since his relatively recent arrival on the scene, having performed and made his mark at lots of different spoken word events, at poetry slams and literary festivals. His work speaks with the same wit and precision as writers like John Betjeman and Jenny Joseph and Spike Milligan, and is indebted to the great tradition of British music hall, vaudeville, and stand-up acts, stemming from people like Max Bygraves and Tommy Cooper, running all the way down to people like Stuart Francis and Milton Jones. So it gives me really great pleasure to introduce everyone to a dear friend of mine and a terrific writer, Rick Sanders. Hello, Rick.
Thanks very much, Rob. I've gone all hot and flushing at that. I'm blushing away at that introduction. That's amazing. Thank you.
Well, I mean every word.
You're very kind.
I think let's start as we mean to go on, and people will. The true test is in the words themselves, isn't it? So let's hear some of your poetry, please. Rick.
Okay, all right. I'm going to ask you to pick a theme, Rob. You've got a choice, right? So you've got food, transport, sport. That's like transport, but without the trans bit at the beginning. Love, beasts, cautionary tales and nonsense. What do you want?
Being an old romantic, Rick, I'm going to go love.
You're going to go love, okay.
Perhaps that was to do with the wink that you gave me, but I'm going to go love.
That's the book there.
Beautiful.
We'll talk about that later.
We will.
This is a love poem, Rob. It's called Ode to the Pylon. I love you, Pylon, as you reach into the skylon, magnificently hylon. You hardly have to trilon. You're eclectic, geometric, definitively electric. Your high wire trapeze, a towering, tempting tease. I want to climb you, even though the health and safety rules define you as life-threatening. I'm betting that the view from you is awe-inspiring. I love you, Pylon, as I spy you from afar on, through the window of my car lawn. Stretched out across the landscape, inviting escape. I'm urged to follow on until we reach the substation where we make the final connection. Sparks will fly on. You will be forever my lawn. Pylon. Thank you. That's that little love poem for you there. I know Rob really secretly wanted to choose food, so I'm going to take my next poem from the food section of my book. This is called Black Magic. It's 1983, I'm at my grounds watching ITV. Grounds on the crochet, and what can I say? It's dull. Then there's a lull in proceedings, as from the box opportunity knocks goes to the ads. After the one about sanitary pads, a beautiful woman appears on the screen. A Duran Duran soundtrack adds to the scene as a bloke like James Bond appears out of nowhere, all Gucci suit and swept-back hair. He smooches over like a silver fox, asking the question, who knows the secret of the black magic box? My gran looks up from her little knitted socks and says, deadpan, it's chocolates, you stupid man. So it's very insightful, my gran, unlike me. I'm going to do a little flavour of each of the sections. So this is one from the transport section of the book. This is called Boy Racers. This will appeal to anybody that has a car and has ever sat at the traffic lights in the car, being egged on by some sort of boy racer next to them. Yeah, it's called Boy Racers. Goes like this. I pulled up to the lights at the Lie Cross and glancing across at the boy racer next to me. He stared back, egged on by his mates, engine revving, drum and bass thumping, testosterone pumping. I looked straight ahead and I thought to myself, well, I'll race you if I like, but it's not going to be much of a contest, you and your Ford KA and me on my push bike. Yeah, true story that. It's another one about transport. This is called Late Train. It's not the original title. The problem was that in the book, published by Verve, you couldn't get the TypeScript to do the numbers. So I think it was originally called the 1523 from Snow Hill. You'll get it. My train is late. The announcement informs disruptive passengers. And I started a debate with the chap next to me about how that can be at 3:20 on a Wednesday afternoon. We get our answer soon as 10 minutes later, the train pulls in and we can see them through the window, the hardcore paramilitary wing of the Women's Institute. They've come from the national conference fueled on tea, jam and Victoria Sponge, the firebrand rhetoric of the collective, the Borg in twin set and pearls. And it's clear that the cherry brandy in hip flask discretion has stoked quite a session. They spill from the train and a chorus of Jerusalem breaks out as they jostle their way towards the exit. I get struck on the knee by a flailing handbag and I'm down on the platform amidst a sea of A-line tweed and sensible shoes. As I struggle to my feet, I hear their battle cry, "Come on, ladies, let's retake the city." And I look up to see the ringleader, my gran, sparking up the first Molotov cocktail. Yeah. Where are we at now? What have I done? Food, yes. Cautionary tales. That's always a good one, isn't it? This is about the perils of lunchtime drinking. I know for a fact that Rob's been there, and I have too, several occasions. So this may be based on a true story. This is called Big Mac, fries to go. I'm standing in the queue thinking, what do I want? I want a Big Mac, fries to go. I'm next in line, so I say to the bloke, I want a Big Mac, fries to go. He looks at me blank, so I say real slow, I want a Big Mac, fries to go. Still no reaction. He's dead behind the eyes. I repeat myself, I want a Big Mac and fries. Without explanation, he vacates his station, returns with a chap in a shirt and a tie. And I wonder if this fella in managerial guise will be able to give me my Big Mac and fries. I'm sorry, he says, we don't have Mac and fries, which I'm telling you now came as quite a surprise, and I'm about to get Larry and have a good shout when he holds up his hand and politely points out, I'm in Boots the Chemist. Yeah. I don't know how much longer I've got, Rob. You've disappeared off the screen as well. I've got no eye contact, nothing. It's just left me hanging, ladies and gents. I'm just going to keep going until he's.
Give us one more, Rick, and then we'll move into the interview bit.
I'll give you a really short one, Rob.
Okay.
This is called Spanish Inquisition. Nobody is. Oh, hello. Okay. I was being heckled then. Heckled online. That's great. It was like being back. Oh, I had a hot flush. It felt like it was being back in the bear pit of the poetry arena. Oof. Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, except perhaps the Spanish. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Brilliant.
Do some more later.
That was wonderful. Thanks very much, Rick. That was great. And for everybody listening, I told you so. lots of nice comments floating into the comments box already, Rick, of people having their ribs tickled. Excellent stuff. So yeah, I want to throw a few questions at you, really, Rick, and try and think about some of your practice and how you came into the scene as well. And I think that's kind of where I want to start. So, I mean, me and you have known each other for maybe like 5 or 6 years from the poetry scene and from various open mic nights and things like that. And I kind of see you as a really great example of what can be done and what can be achieved when you just throw yourself into a project and throw yourself into a culture, and go hard at it like you have. So I want to kind of use you as an example, really. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about how poetry started for you, how you came involved in the local scenes, and how you've kind of forged your way into it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because it is quite an interesting story, because poetry was not on my radar at all. As you said in your introduction, I'm a musician as well, and the music element of my creativity, I suppose, had kept me occupied for donkey's years. And I was in a band, and the lead singer, her dad, was headlining at the Permission to Speak night that you used to run, Robert, in Stourbridge at Claptrap. And she said, "Oh, can you come down? Give some support, because otherwise there'll be one man and his dog there." And we were like, yeah, sure. I just saw it as a kind of free night out and a bit of a drink, and I had no expectation of what it was going to be like at all. And that one night just completely changed my life. Absolutely, on that one single night. And it wasn't just that it was poetry, which is, for most people, they're not really either that interested in poetry or don't think that they're interested in poetry. But it was just that kind of mix of different voices that was just, it was an amazing experience, bearing in mind the kind of cultural and political aspects of life in general that I had been experiencing for a while, and just the willingness of people to just get in front of a mic and just talk poetry to complete strangers. Some of it was quite heartfelt, some of it was funny, all of it was different, and I thought, wow, what an amazing night. And it turned out then that the following month was going to land on Jill, my wife's birthday. So we just said, well, we'll come back. This is a great night out. Let's come back and do something. And I hatched this plot then, Rob, to secretly turn up and read this poem. So I wrote this. I went home and sort of wrote this poem down to celebrate Jill's birthday. And I thought, right, I'll surprise her. I'll get up on the mic and read this poem. So I was inspired by the whole thing, straight away. And I wanted the poem to be, a bit tongue in cheek and quite funny. So I written this thing out, and then I got there on the night, and I thought, and you were taking lists of names down onto the open mic bit. And I thought, well, I can't put my name down as Rick Sanders, because she'll twig it straight away. And I thought, I want to keep the suspense going as long as the facade going as long as I could. So I just gave you a name with the first name that popped into my head, which was Willis. Because I do some design work under the name Willis Designs, and then I sneaked onto the stage. She thought I was just going to the toilet, but I wasn't. I was running up to the mic and read my poem. Got really excited and incredibly nervous, but yeah, it was just fantastic. And then I started to come back every month, and it was a catalyst for me to start writing again, and also a challenge to write new material, because I knew that I was going to be coming back to the same night, and I actually only really did that one night for quite a few months. I would say probably for the best part of a year. That was the only thing that I was really doing. 6 months maybe. But it really challenged me to write new material each month, and then because I didn't want to perform the same thing. And yeah, it was crazy. I was doing little songs, and I was doing kind of stupid little poems. I think you always used to set a theme as well from the night that you had to come back the next month. And so I always used to write one on the theme, and it was brilliant. And then I just got into it, and then I just started going to all the open mics that I could find, you know, and there's a lot of open mics. And yeah, I just started performing, started meeting people, socializing. And then it just kind of escalated now. And then I was putting on events and had a radio show. So it just went a bit nuts. But I did make that decision, like you said earlier, that I was really gonna go for it, really big style for a year and just see what would happen. Because by that time I was completely hooked to writing. And I just thought, well, I'd really like to do more of this. And I thought, well, I'll go hard at it for as long as I can, see where it takes me. And yeah, like 5-6 years later, you know, I'm not including the pandemic because that doesn't count. But you know, it's probably more like 7 years now, 6-7 years. We're still going, still writing. Yeah, amazing to have a book out, which is an unbelievable thing for somebody who does the sort of things that I do, poetry wise. And yeah, I'm really just looking forward now to just getting back in front of the mic, in front of live audiences, and yeah, just starting to enjoy it again.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, well, I'm glad you kind of rested that thought with the book as well, because that's what we're here for. That's to kind of congratulate you and to celebrate the launch of the book. Which is a great success and full of your trademark wit and surreal visions. Were there any big inspirations for the book? Are there any kind of themes? I mean, you mentioned a few themes that pop up time and again in the book. But how did the book come about as well?
Yeah, so I started to do quite a lot of work with Verve. So it's published by Verve Poetry Press, which is a Birmingham-based publishing outfit, but it's really just a one-man band, you know. But I started to do quite a lot of work with them with their festival. So they have this really amazing poetry festival, which takes place every year when it can, in Birmingham, and that's been going now for probably 3 years. So this is a really good way if you're new and you want to get into poetry and you want to get into meeting as many poets as you can, just go and volunteer at a poetry festival, because you get well, you get in for free, which is great, because normally, you know, it costs you an arm and a leg, doesn't it, to go to a poetry festival. But you kind of get the inside track on how it all works in the background. You meet all the pop star poets, you know, all the big names. You get to meet them and look after them in the green room, that sort of thing. Yeah, you just get completely immersed in this world, and you get a bit of understanding of how a poetry festival works, you know, what it's all about. So I started, you know, building this relationship, volunteering and doing that for a few years. And then I kept ribbing Stuart. He said, you need a comic poet. You know, that's what you need on your publication, you know, on your published works, because it's all too serious. It's all too serious by half. And then he just phoned me up one day and said, yeah, well, I think I'll publish that book you had been talking about. So he got me to send him, you know, about 1 million gazillion poems I've got, and he wheedled them down with his expert editing skills to what's in the book. But it was nice because I think he wanted to try something different. So I was a sort of guinea pig for him. I think he wanted to try a book with not only the poems in, but also some artwork in it, some graphics in it, which he kind of wanted to do as well. You know, so he got really involved in the kind of creation of the different pictures and stuff. I'll show you an example. So that one, you can see that? Excellent. That's me with my chef's hat on, but he put the chef's hat on, you see. So I think he had this little hankering to be able to get on his Adobe PageMaker or whatever it was and get creative. So it was a real sort of mashup of different elements. It's got some collage work that I've started doing collage in lockdown. I'm addicted to that now, Rob. First it was poetry and now it's collage. So I wanted to put some of those images in, and about, I think about 4 years ago, I met this cartoonist guy, and this is all about, you know, who you meet on the circuit or on the scene or whatever. And he did these sort of caricatures of me, which I'd originally put on a CD and a little bookmark. I made this little bookmark of these little strip cartoons. He did some strip cartoons of my very short poems, and they're just brilliant, you know. And I thought, oh yeah, they're great. So I stuck those in the book as well. And so yeah, it's a real kind of mashup of lots of different elements of it. The themes are just, I suddenly realized that I wrote a lot about travel, because I was traveling a lot. I wrote a lot about food because I eat quite a bit. I wrote, you know, stuff about love, because all poets are in love primarily with themselves. And then, I don't know, the rest was, yeah, the nonsense cautionary tales. You know, a lot of the stuff I write is just rubbish, really, isn't it? You know, let's face it, but everybody gets it. You know, it's kind of just this, you're right when you said Spike Milligan at the beginning, because, you know, his poetry is just great. Most of it's in a different language than we would normally use, but you kind of just get it. It's very immediate, very entertaining, and yeah, and just funny. And I wanted to kind of channel that nonsense stuff that goes on in my head into my poems, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it works really wonderfully. I think, you know, both you as a performance act and as a poet, the two things kind of collide and clash together in really interesting ways, and I think that's why you've been so successful and such a crowd pleaser in your time in the poetry world. I mean, as we've touched on kind of nonsense and comedy and whatnot, maybe I'll skip forward a few questions and think about the comic and the comedy stylings here. Because you, like you said, you're sometimes referred to as a stand-up comic or a stand-up poet or a comic poet.
Yeah,
and I'm really interested in the links between comedy and poetry. Things like timing and shape and the precision of language, to name a few things. How does comedy and poetry come together for you in your work? Does one thing shape the other, or does one thing start another?
Well, yeah, I think for both comedy and for poetry, actually, for me anyway, it's all about wordplay. You know, yeah. So a lot of the poems that I write, you know, like Spanish Inquisition, for example. Okay, that's a complete rip-off from Monty Python, obviously, but it's taking that premise of the Spanish Inquisition, which is funny in its own right because of its association with Monty Python, and then just thinking, well, how can you make that slightly funnier? Everybody, you know, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition except the Spanish, because they obviously would, because they're Spanish. And then you can work that whole theme through, you know, like, so anything about Spain you can then throw in and carry on that joke, if you like, the joke of the poem. You can carry that through in a thread afterwards. So you could do Spanish galleon or something. Nobody expects the Spanish galleon except perhaps the Spanish, you know. And and then with that repetition, which is a very common trope of comedy, you find that you're tying people's expectations into repeat and into the unexpected. So quite often in my sets, I'll have series of poems that are linked. They'll just get delivered at random whenever I think it's appropriate to throw them in to the set. And then the very first one, people are like, what the hell was that all about? You know, and I've moved on to another poem. And then about halfway through, they'll get this kind of second segment of it, and they'll go, oh, look at that. That's really clever, isn't it? He's referring back to that thing that he did at the beginning. And then, you know, and then you'll get to the third bit of it. They normally come in triplets of within comedy. So that's a kind of a style, a stand-up style that for me works really well, because you can play on the words, you can play on the positioning of those words, and you can play on the timing of when you do it. So it's a little bit of both, but ultimately for both elements of it, it's just about playing with words. For me, trying to make them humorous and engaging and unexpected. And it just, I don't know, it just seems to work. It is about the delivery as well.
One of it as well, isn't there, Rick? You know, you mentioned the kind of the rule of three that happens in comedy, that the ideas of kind of incongruity or kind of challenging expectations and things like that. And all of these are similar kind of tools to your sort of more standard traditional poet, I guess, that is trying to find form for an idea or form for an observation. So they're all very, very, you know, the boundaries bleed into each other, I think.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and a lot of the time, what you'll find, Rob, is that you won't even have an idea in your head of a poem at all. You know, it will be a blank page, and then you'll get one line or a phrase or something that is for you an interesting phrase, and then that forms the basis then of the whole of the poem. You know, and it's just about finding the comic element in that. I'm just trying to think of a good example. I have one in my head, of course, which is now completely gone. Because as you get older, those things happen. But they can quite often be end lines of a poem for me. So it's almost like you think of the catchphrase before you think of the poem. So I've thought of the kind of the comic end to it before I've even thought about what goes before, and then you create. So you're almost starting from backwards.
Yeah, I know Jerry Seinfeld works that way. I've seen interviews with Jerry Seinfeld where he wrestles with the words in the right order for months and months and months before he puts anything out there. But more often than not, it's the punch. I remember seeing an interview with him for one of his oldest jokes, and he knew that he wanted the kind of laugh moment to be Pop-Tarts, and he knew he wanted to do some material on breakfast, and he knew that Pop-Tarts, just because of the kind of the way it sounds, it's a really funny word, like two words together. And so everything came out of where it was going to end. It was a very, very interesting process. Yeah.
The thing, the poem I was thinking about, which is not in the book, but it's called Souvenir. The poem is, but I started with the last line, which was Plaster of Paris, and the whole story of the dialogue of the poem is that, oh, we've gone to Paris on holiday, and things happen, you know, and it's amazing. But I end up nearly cutting my finger off with a sharp knife in the French Airbnb, and then the whole thing leads up to the gag line, which is my plaster of Paris. And I hold up my finger and I've got a little sticky plaster tape on it. I got my plaster of Paris like that, and it's just so that's a good example of how it works in my brain. You know, I've just got that. That's a really nice phrase, isn't it? Plaster of Paris, and it can mean so many different things. And then I just like to play with those things, that play with the different meanings, because you all have one idea in your head of what plaster of Paris means. I've got something completely different in my head about what plaster of Paris is, and it's a sticky plaster, obviously.
Excellent. Yeah. On a more serious note, I suppose in lots of ways, I feel anyway, I don't know how you feel about this, and perhaps some of our listeners feel, that comedy is quite an undervalued art form in our society. Perhaps perhaps less so in America. I mean, America's stand-up seems to be taken more seriously as an art form. And certainly comic verse and comedic poetry is seen as somewhat less than serious poems. Do you have any observations on why that might be?
Why it might be, I don't know. I don't know why it might be. I think it's true though. I think what I've found is, as I've started to try and make any money doing what I do, which is like, you might as well just say, oh yeah, I'm a freelance comic poet, which is normally just, well, I'm just unemployed, because that's what that actually means. Yeah, you do. You find that the comedy, when you announce yourself as a stand-up comic poet, you just cut off a whole range of things that you could have got involved in the poetry world, like your serious poetry festivals. And that was why I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to get published. Not in a million years, not, unless I do it myself. So there's that expectation in your head that you just won't be taken seriously, even though actually the comedy element of what you're doing, it hides behind the ability to write poetry or write any sort of comic material in such a way that it will make people laugh, And then I quite often have conversations with what I like to refer to as real poets. That's people like you, Rob, who then go, oh, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you write the comic stuff. I've tried to write, a comic haiku, and it's just rubbish. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's because it's really difficult to do, in the same way that I can't really write brilliantly crafted poems about the place and fossils and, all that stuff, because it's not my bag, that's not how my brain works. It's not how my poetry brain works by any stretch of the imagination. So I always then say to people, well, stick to what you know, stick to what you're comfortable with. And I'm lucky, I suppose, in a way, because I know if I'm in an open mic, or if I'm doing a performance and I might be trying new material or just trying out material for the first time to people that haven't seen me before, I know immediately whether it's working or not, because if they ain't laughing, it ain't working. Whereas I often think that for more traditional poets, that are bearing their soul or writing beautifully about landscape or, something that's, heavily steeped in metaphor, or, I look at them and I think, how do you know that people are getting what you're trying to do? Because they're not going to get a lot. If they get a laugh from it, that's probably the wrong reaction. Whereas if they get, this, yes, yes, get that at the end of the poem, they've probably done it. But I don't know. I just think, crikey, you must be super brave to stand up and not be able to really gauge whether people are getting what you're getting. Which is what I said in the beginning of my book. The dedication at the beginning of a book, or one of them, is to everybody that's ever stood up in front of a mic and done poetry, at an open mic, because it's super scary, and I think unfortunate, because I know when it's working. But I think if you don't get that reaction, you have to be very self-assured to be able to carry on doing it, So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, but I think it is undervalued, Rob. In answer to your question, and one of the other reactions I always get from people as well is they say, "Oh, you were great. You really brought the whole thing to life." And it's like they have almost forgotten the rest of the poetry that's gone on. And I kind of think, well, okay, that's interesting in its own right, isn't it? It's nice that they say that to me. But I also find that quite funny, because they've gone to an open mic poetry night to listen to a lot of different poetry and poetry styles. But the funny thing is that they always remember the comic stuff. I don't know what you want to make of that, but yeah, it's an interesting art form, I suppose, if you want to call it that.
Sure is. Yeah, some of your thoughts there have bring me back to a couple of the other things that I've got on my notes about your kind of editing process and about that kind of audience, that immediate feedback that you get that sort of ties into what you know works and what you know doesn't. And like, obviously a huge part of your practice is through performance. And I can understand how that shapes your work in terms of whether it's funny or not, or whether people think it's funny and not just you. Do you have any sort of top tips from things that you've learned from your time as a kind of performer for budding performers?
Yeah. I mean, this probably stands the test of time for whatever style of poetry you're writing, or performing. But I always think if I do a poem, I always do it in three different places before I decide whether I'm going to keep it in a set or not. And that is down to audience reaction, purely down to audience reaction. So, and it's useful to know that not all poetry audiences are going to be the same. So you kind of have to gauge that, and you don't really know how to gauge that until you've done a lot of different events in a lot of different places. So you kind of have to gauge the audience. I generally just carry on regardless, even though I can gauge the audience now. But that is primarily, I kind of set myself up a little bit to get into problems there because of the way that my performance is. As you'll know, Rob, I use a lot of different books and little books from different pockets and all this kind of thing, which is part of the visual comedy stand-up. But it also means that it's very structured in terms of how I do it. So that set is written and done, and it's always performed in that way. It's very difficult then to improvise. So the only improvisation really comes if you get a heckle, or if you get if you want to particularly engage with somebody in the audience on a given thing, then you can improvise that way. But in terms of the structure of the set, it's quite formulaic in a way. But I suppose the point I'm making is if I try a poem and it works in one of those three locations, and I generally tend to keep it in. If it crashes and burns every night I'm doing it, I just I kick that one into touch. I think that obviously doesn't work, and it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's okay, because not everything I write is going to appeal to everybody. In fact, Stuart took out most of the poems that I wanted in the book, because he was quite, he was quite canny at editing it out. But he didn't like the more of what I like to call the carry-on stuff, which is a little bit, vaudeville, a little bit, not carry on. It's a little bit carry on, from having grown up in that era. And he's like, not sure that's appropriate. And I'm like, okay, yeah, great. When I do it every night, it goes down a storm. But if you don't want to put it in the book, that's okay. I don't mind. So it's just those different. It's different people's opinions of what you're doing. But I think for most people that get up in front of an open mic, and myself included, I'm there in a way to express my own creativity. My creativity tends to be comic, hopefully, and so that's great. So I can get that immediate feedback. What I would just say to anybody that's starting out, just find your own voice. Find your own voice that you're really comfortable with, and then put it out there and see what happens. If you enjoy it and you get a lot from it, and every time you stand up and perform in front of people, you enjoy that experience, then great, just keep going. If it makes you feel really nervous and if you're on the toilet for 4 hours beforehand, then maybe it's not the right thing for you. That's all I'm saying, Rob.
Yeah, maybe. I've just spotted a little comment from our mutual friend Nina Lewis, who said that you could perhaps blue tack the missing poems into the book, and then they're in the collection.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I'll print a whole lot of other pages, Nina, and I'll just stick them in, and nobody will know. He'll never know.
That might be a good prompt for us to see if there are any questions from the audience. I'll just go into the chat. Hopefully people can still hear me while I'm doing this. Okay, so a question from Josiane. Hi Josiane, welcome. Thanks for showing up. Has asked whether you would say that comic poetry is attractive because it's uplifting, thinking of people like Pam Ayres, who's a great wordsmith, but also very entertaining. So
Yeah.
The kind of uplifting side of it that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, I write for my own benefit, but I also write with an audience in mind, you know, especially now that I'm comfortable in the performance element of it. And I always like to think that, yeah, if I can work a room, that's a technical term, if I can work the room and leave them laughing, then, you know, that's me, that's job done. That's job done for me. You know, it's nice to be able to make people laugh and yeah, kind of entertain them. You know, I'm an entertainer, really.
But you're a very natural, and you know, I mean, whenever I talk about you to people, I always say you're just one of those people that just has funny bones. I think there's probably a lot more to what you do than than perhaps you give yourself credit for, and also that there's a lot that happens behind the scenes in preparation for it, because you seem so natural.
Yeah,
even though it's such peculiar.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching a program. It was like a documentary, you know, one of those mockumentary things about Morecambe and Wise, and I think, or it might have been a dramatization of the guy that used to write for them. So I always thought, they write all their own material, you know, it's great, isn't it? You know, they're just naturally gifted, funny people, but they're not. You know, it was just written by somebody else, and then they were the comedy element that we were able to then take that script and perform it in a way that was funny, even though the source material is obviously funny as well. But when you think of something like somebody like Eric Morecambe, you know, a lot of what makes him funny is nothing to do with the script and the words. It's just his presence on the stage, you know, his mannerisms, his asides, almost. It's the kind of things that he doesn't do that are, you know, that where all the humor is held. So yeah, I think of people like that, people like Harry Hill. You know, you just have to look at him and you're immediately laughing in some way, shape, or form. So either because he just looks ridiculous. You know, I can remember him when I first saw Harry Hill on the telly, and he's in the kind of lab coat with all the pens and his huge great collar up here, you know, and he's immediately funny even before he's opened his mouth, and then when he opens his mouth, it's hilarious. So there's elements of how you kind of hold yourself on the stage, little tricks about, yeah, things like that. I started in lockdown, actually, when I had no audience. I thought, I'll just do some little videos, and you know, just to keep myself entertained more than anything else. And then I had this idea of having this musical instrument with me that I would just have on, like I'd walk on with a guitar, and then I'd sort of just put it then around my back, you know, wouldn't play it at all. And then I'd do this little poetry set, and then I'd go to play this guitar, and then just as I'm about to strike the first chord, you know, the video cuts off, and that's it. So it's just, you know, so I'm using the instrument as a comic prop. And I did think one day I might just do a whole set just with a guitar, just never play it, just walk on with it, have it around me, you know, and then just walk off. And I love the idea that somebody will be sitting in the audience thinking, what the hell did he bring that guitar with him for? He said he hasn't even played it. And I'm like, yes, that's why, because it's funny. Yeah. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question, Josiane. I'm sure it has in some way, on some strange level. That's worked.
Wonderful. I think that might I think it might be time now, Rick, for you to get your guitar out and
Yeah.
give us some more poetry.
Well, I have brought my kazoo, Rob.
Mute myself and turn my video off while you're doing your last little reading. What were you?
How long do you want?
Give us 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. I'll tell you what. As soon as we were talking about musical performance, I have, as I say in my set, for people that know me, Rob, I am always pushing the boundaries of poetry, and I've written a series of poems for performance on the kazoo.
Oh yeah.
Can you see that? Oh, it's a bit out of tune there. That's better. So I'll give you a yeah. You see that's comedy gold right there. I'll give you a kazoo poem. This is for your poetry intellectuals. This is a kazoo haiku. See, that even rhymes. Fantastic. Here we go. Thank you. Yes. Oh, class in a glass. Fantastic. Okay. I was going to ask Rob to pick a theme, but he's gone off somewhere. He's gone for a lie down, I think. He's had enough. I'm going to do beasts.
I'm happy to pick another theme.
Oh, go on then.
We have the sport that's not sport. It's got tran in front of it.
Transport. Okay. Yeah. I've already done some from transport, Rob, but I know that, I'll keep you entertained. This one is called I Just Wanted to Let You Know. Might be another true story, Rob. So, yeah, as I said before, I do quite a lot of travel on the train to and from places. So I write a lot about trains. So this is called I Just Wanted to Let You Know. On the train to work last week, I'm opposite a woman who keeps trying to sneak a peek at my disarmingly good looks. I mean, yeah, you couldn't write it in a book. I swear the number of times that women of a certain age sit and stare. It's embarrassing, really. But also, it's quite appealing to know that I've still got what it takes to turn heads while other blokes my age have retired to their sheds, out of harm's way, unable to play in the playing field, on the swings and on the roundabouts. But for me, no such doubts. I'm all over the monkey bars, like a monkey, except in a suit. Not a monkey suit, of course. I don't go to work in fancy dress, but I digress. She's still giving me the eye, and as we pull into Snow Hill, she's reached across. She placed her hand on my thigh. I hope you don't mind, she says, but before you dash, I just wanted to let you know, you got some food stuck in your tash. Story of my life there. So that was transport. I won't do the really long ones. Here's a list poem, Rob. I know you're a big fan of the formalist stuff. Here we go. List poem. Mary had a little lamb, slice of roast beef, turkey, some boiled potatoes, seasonal veg, gravy, and a teaspoon of mint sauce. And that's called Toby Carvery. Nice. That was a food one. Where are we now? This is one of my favorites. I'm back in the love section now, Rob. This one is called Blind Date. This is for all you people out there trying to get a blind date. I'm on a blind date looking for the one, the special one. Just like Jose Mourinho, except a bit more smiley-out and female. I check my phone, no email, text or tweet, no Instagram of her cold feet, no missed call to say forget it all. So I order another drink and keep an eye on the door. On the radio, they're playing Modern Love, and I'm not above recognizing the irony, although I'm not a big fan of David Bowie, or is it Bowie? Bowie, how am I supposed to know he? On the week he died, I turned off Radio Sick. I was sick to the back teeth of the sycophantic platitudes from across the hordes. I just got bored of being told how he was gold, inspired a generation, warmed the cockles of a nation. And if you didn't like him, a bit like me, and he must be a knob, a Philistine, strange, or any combination of the three. My date has arrived, and I'm pleasantly surprised. She seems nice and has already apologised twice for being late. And I think to myself, wouldn't it be great if this one didn't hurt? But then she takes off her coat to reveal a David Bowie t-shirt. Yep, that's a classic era there. This is a history one for you. It's called Richard III. I went to Polytechnic in Leicester, and it turns out that for one whole semester, I was walking over Richard III on my way, ironically, you might say, to my lectures on the limitations of the English monarchy in the latter Middle Ages. Yeah, a short one there. Right, another short one, Rob, to keep you going. So my daughter, she challenged me to write a poem about the alphabet. Yeah, tricky, eh? So anyway, here we go. It's called The Alphabet. A is for alphabet. There you go, sorted. Yeah, perfect. Yes, excellent. What we are, I'll give you another sport one. This is for all your footballers in the Lye town. Yes, just up the road. Footballer from Lye. This is a limerick. I know you like the form, Rob. There was a footballer from Lye, accursed with a wandering eye. His wife caught him looking and gave him a booking, red card and a nasty black eye. Oh, right, like that, right there. Ouch. There's an example of one of my little cartoons. You see that? You can get that in the book. That's available from Verve Poetry Press. Yep, cheap at half the price. This one's called Table Tennis, which is that. Yeah, table tennis. No matter what your mates might say, down the pub on a Friday night, down the pub after 10 pints of snake bite, it's unlikely you'll be able to play tennis with a bedside table. Thank you. Yes. I've got time for any more? What's happening? Shall I finish on this one, Rob?
Yeah,
I can't see him. He's got how many?
Yeah, give us one more.
Well, I thought you said 12 more. I was just going to keep going. Okay, I'll finish with this one because this has made me quite famous across the world of drug dealing, which is always a good position to be in, I feel. So this poem was inspired by the very true story. This is where I get my inspiration from, Rob, the internet, most of the days. Of a 74-year-old man, he was arrested for giving his church congregation cookies laced with cannabis. My kind of church. The Cannabis Anarchist, it's called. He pops up at social functions where there is a heartfelt need for community-based donations and a lot of hungry mouths to feed. He brings his secret stash inside his Tupperware, his cookies laced with hash for everyone to share. He's bought some lemon sherbet dabs and he stuck to all the dipping lollies hallucinogenic acid tabs. In about an hour, they'll be off their trolleys. Inside his chocolate eclair, his modified creme fraiche delivers a 1,000-yard stare. That's brought on by crystal meth. He's put uppers in the cuppers, kibbles in the nibbles, rehypnol in the Arctic roll, and whack in all the flapjack. There's purple haze in the canapes, Peruvian flake in the carrot cake. He's even laced the margarine with A-grade street sauce benzodrine. And to feed his need for the sharing of joy, he's put crazy weed in the Savoy. Oh, there's rock in all the rock cakes, there's cake in all the other cakes, Tamazipan in the breaded ham and ketamine in the strawberry jam. He's spiked the tea with LSD, the sandwiches with ecstasy, there's even Acapulco red in his freshly baked banana bread. He's a one-man pharmacologist, the UK's Walter White, an all-star congregationalist doing what he thinks is right. So, to help us all, I've pulled some strings. And though it seems preposterous, he's down to do the catering at the Tory party conference. Yes. Hashtag vote Labour. Thank you. Cheers, Rob.
Thank you very much, Rick. That was awesome. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in as well.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
So, as Rick says, the secret notebook of Willis the Poet is available from Verve Poetry Press. Really, really cool, dynamic, cutting-edge local press that I urge you all to check out. And we're not going to be too far away from the Verve Poetry Festival, which I believe happens in February, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So keep your eyes peeled for that too. I will now hand over to Claire to tell you all what's happening with ArtsFest Online next. Before that, I'll just say thanks very much, Rick. I love you.
Thanks, Rob. I love you too. I'll write a poem about that.
Thanks, Rick. I'm giggling my head off there in the background. Acapulco red in the banana bread. That's just brilliant. Rob, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Our next ArtsFest Online event is the 25th of October at 7 p.m. and is a talk on East Asian representation in the Broadway musical Allegiance. And you can book for free, as always, through Eventbrite. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Night.